Hey, everybody. Welcome. Today we're talking with Candy Barone. Candy is an executive coach, transformational business strategist, and human design leadership specialist. Buckle up because we're headed off road. Hit the like button if you're on board with where we're going. For a lot of us, success requires us to compete with the sameness of AI generated content, strategies, and personas. This is not to be critical of the potential for AI to increase our proficiency or efficiency. But if not checked, it can dampen our impact and turn our efforts into commodities that can be produced by anyone. If you've ever felt this way, we've got just the expert for you. She can help us discover our own path to both growth and success. Candy, welcome to the Subscription Maker Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Zachary, so much. I am deeply honored to be here. Super excited to engage in the conversation with you today.
What is human design?
Great place to start. Human design is a system. And I think it might be easier to say what human design is not to really understand what it is. And so I think a lot of people think it's another assessment that's out there that is in some way, fashion, or form here to put you in another box and tell you who you are. And I will tell you that that's probably one of the biggest myths around human design, as human design is really an energetic blueprint. It is this beautiful synthesis of Eastern philosophy and Western science. And it is this mapping of your unique coding and wiring in terms of how you operate in the world. And so it's not about who you are, where most people feel human design is this lens to show you who you are. No, you have free will. You can decide who you are at any juncture in your life. It's about how you are. And so it's how you operate, how you make decisions best, how you're in alignment, how you work, rest, and play best, how you engage in the world and interact with others. And so it's an energetic blueprint or the operating plan of you in terms of how you operate and use energy that's available to you and how you're interacting in the world as a result.
And what does that mean as it relates to impact?
As it relates to impact, first, I would say it means that we are not wired to be like everybody else. We live in a culture that very much tries to create a pathway that looks the same for everyone. We define success as this is the education, this is the roadmap, this is the things. And what we don't realize is we're not all wired to move through the same paths, through the same systems, even in the same direction. And so if you think about each and every one of us being this very unique piece of an overall collective puzzle, we need a roadmap or we need an operating plan to understand our function in the world and how it fits with the other pieces. And so when we think about our impact, oftentimes there's a very vanilla or very generic version of my impact's to do this. And we sound a lot of the same instead of recognizing that our impact is very unique and very innate to our individual wiring. We each have a purpose that we are here to live out, to be the full expression of in our life. And when we can tap into that, when we can dial in and harness that energy in the right way that feels correct and aligned for us, we then can amplify and exponentially expand the level of impact we can put into the world.
What are the steps that we can take today to start our human design journey and ensure greater impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple different ways I guess you could get started. First and foremost would be get a free chart. So there's a lot of different sites where you can you put in your birth date, you put in your time of birth, and you put in your location of birth. that you can get a map done. And so one of the ways that people start to explore human design can be going down sort of rabbit holes on their own, where they're starting to pull out various pieces within their chart to get a better understanding. I know for me, that's kind of where I went. I went rabbit hole diving, and it got me nowhere fast. And so then I started to work with people that have actually trained or been studying the systems of human design for quite some time. And so I would suggest that somebody get their free chart. They sort of see where their curiosity and their interest is, and then find someone who resonates for you. Because the people, myself included, the way we talk through the chart and help you contemplate or help you consider what might resonate for you feels very different depending on who's doing that reading through your chart. But I would say if you really are interested in understanding what your unique wiring looks like, find somebody who actually knows what they're doing in that space to help guide you through the fundamentals. I think there's a lot of people out there that sometimes gloss over those fundamentals. There's a lot we can learn about our way we make decisions, the way we're here to show up, the way we have consistent access to energy and what we're absorbing and taking in from others. When we really understand that on a much more grounded, on a deeper level, we can start to then make very significant but very small tweaks that then generate a level of ease, a level of real integrity and alignment for how we get to show up, and drop us into something that feels so much more congruent for us. So my suggestion would be have somebody help you navigate through those first fundamental pieces.
Based on your experience, what kind of time frame are we looking for before we can expect to see some results?
Oh, see, that's a bit of a challenging question, because I would say that that's going to look different for everybody. One of the things I think we probably need to dispel a little bit in terms of an expectation, or reset an expectation when we're talking about human design. Human design is not something you're going to figure out. It's not some magical equation that's going to give you the answers to how to solve all the issues and all the challenges in your life. And it's not some switch you're going to turn on that's going to move you into something new. Now, it can happen that fast. Human design really is a system that meets you where you're at. And what I mean by that is it's an ongoing tool or guidance system to navigate you moving through deeper resonance around what you're here to experience, what you're here to put out into the world, what you're here to learn, areas you're here to get wise. And so there's some reoccurring themes that show up in people's lives. And it's part of what we'll call their soul curriculum. It's part of their soul's expression and then their life's expression. And so there are things that you are meant to bump up against, but it's like that ongoing onion where you're constantly peeling another layer back. So depending on where you are in your own journey, depending on what you've done in terms of healing your own sense of self-worth, how you've brought yourself back into alignment, what you glean from human design can be instantaneous, or it can be something that is sort of ruminating in the background that you're contemplating that will drop in when you're ready for it. And so it really is the sort of adage around when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and when the teacher is ready, the student appears, that human design is going to meet you where you're at. And every time you go in human design, even when you go into the same things, it's like another rabbit hole or another layers being peeled back. So that question in and of itself is a little challenging, because my simple answer is it depends. It depends on where you're at in your journey. It depends on where you're at in your own alignment, where you're at in your own leadership, and what you're open and available for in order to receive. Because I will say, especially in the beginning, well, even now, but in the beginning, there are things that may show up that will trigger you, because part of the impact of human design, or the focus of human design, is to help wake us up, to show us where we're out of alignment. So it can feel a little challenging to see ourselves through the lens of what our human design is trying to show us. And so that can look different for each person depending on what they're available for.
So I guess my next question, the reason I asked that
So,
is because a lot of times people think it's taking too long. I haven't done enough. I'm not doing it right. If they don't see instant results, then they get upset. So I always like to ask people, how long should you expect? And that was the reason for asking that question.
Well, and
So
if I
now that
might
I'm
add to that, though, Zachary, if I can add to that. So here's what I would offer you to expect. The first pass, I will tell you, almost every person I've worked with in human design, and I know this for myself, it's not so much that something's going to shift and something magical is going to happen immediately. It may. And for a lot of people, it has. It's more about really being able to settle into a place to either feel seen for the first time, to feel be recognized for your innate gifts and your superpowers, and to honestly drop into a space where you finally can give yourself permission to be who you've always known you to be, but likely have conditioned yourself or programmed yourself or should it or shamed all over yourself to think you had to play or be a different way. And so there's a lot of, I think one of the fundamental fastest shifts that happens almost instantaneous for people when they get in their human design is being able to drop into giving themselves permission to be who they choose to be and feel already a sense of alignment in, oh, no wonder why I've always struggled with that. I'm not wired that way. Oh, I just feel it's like they get to take the weight off and breathe and just sit in a space to accept, oh, there's nothing broken about me. There's nothing missing. Oh, this is just how I'm wired. And there's such a permission in that I think I don't want to just skim over that, because while there may not be a lot of shifts right away, that can be extremely powerful for people.
okay, Candy, let's shift gears a little bit. Tell us about your company, You Empowered Strong.
Yes. Oh, You Empowered Strong is all about how to say yes to yourself. So if you look at YOU, Empowered Strong spells the word yes as an acronym. Everything I do in my business is an acronym of some sort, but You Empowered Strong really is a space to do just that. We think empowerment is this thing outside of us. It's kind of the same analogy I use with motivation, that we think we can motivate someone. We think we're going to empower someone. And the answer is actually that's not possible. Empowerment is an intrinsic game. Empowerment is a choice that we make to take our power back. It is that power from within that says, I get to stand in the fullness of who I am. I get to. And so everything I do is from the lens of leadership, to acknowledge that leadership is a choice. And if we are going to reclaim our own power back and be able to say yes to ourselves, we need to then, and leadership is a choice. So it's a function of three things. It's a function of how you choose to show up. It's a function of how you choose to serve others. And it's a function of how you choose to take personal responsibility inside those two spaces. Leadership is a choice. It is everyone's opportunity, and it's a team sport. And it starts when we learn how to lead ourselves first. So everything You Empowered Strong is about is reminding ourselves that empowerment starts with me, as does my own leadership. And if I want to create the opportunities to inspire, influence, and impact others, I need to bring myself into alignment first and do the work that says, am I leading myself in my highest and best capacity? Because it's the only way I can offer my gifts and service to others and to lead them as well. And so everything that we do is in that space of leadership and knowing that we all have an opportunity to lead, and it really is a choice.
Now, did you start out doing human design when you started your company?
I did not. My company is going on 11 years. I stepped into human design 6 years ago. I had a very tumultuous, some things that were going on in my business and personally. And I had just come off a deep spiritual retreat working with one of my teachers. And it was actually one of my students, one of my clients in my mastermind, that introduced human design to me. And in true manifestor form, she activated something that took me down the nonstop, endless rabbit holes over the last 6 years. And immediately I felt the power of it. I'm an assessment queen. I love assessment. So I had thought it it was initially another assessment. And I was like, ooh, let's check it out. Finding out that that's not what it was, but I incorporated it almost immediately with my one-on-one clients 6 years ago. And it's only been probably the last year and a half that I've decided that I felt called to bring it out and have a conversation with the masses as well. And so examples such as this is being invited to this podcast and to share that story. But it only became part of my business about 6 years ago.
So, did you have to pivot at all during the pandemic?
Yes, I will say, interestingly enough, I had where my business was so online at one point, I had decided that I really wanted to create very intimate, sacred containers in person. And so I had mapped out my entire 2020 to be all in person engagements. And let me tell you, you have to do a hard pivot when you can't go anywhere. So yeah, it took me about 4 months to really get things sort of moved around. I will say human design for me was extremely helpful because it kept me in a space where I didn't go spiraling off thinking I had to do all the things everybody else was doing. I have a lot of openness in my head area, my head and my ajna. And that means I can take in a lot of inspiration around me. And so to really ground myself in what was the best strategies for my company, um, it took a minute, right? It wasn't something I wanted to react to. It was something I really wanted to be mindful and intentional about my response. So yeah, I honestly don't know too many people that haven't had some sort of pivot. And I will say, even since the pandemic, I have had multiple pivots since then. I've had a pivot when the pandemic hit. I've had a pivot going through my own stuff where I felt like I was carrying my clients too much because everything just felt so heavy and dense. And there's a lot of codependency energy in some of my wiring. So I got to sit with a whole nother layer of how do I sort of untether myself from wanting to hold them and care for them and fix it. And then even the universe and the way it does things, it pulled me out to a sabbatical 2 years ago that I was not anticipating. And coming out of that, it actually allowed me to create a brand new platform within and a brand new podcast, because I had had a previous podcast, but it allowed me a brand new platform, a brand new podcast, really around alignment. That came through as a result. So there's been some really hard pivots for me. And then I lost my soul puppy a year and a half ago, who that really was that changed a lot for me. And so yeah, it's been a big season the last probably 4 years of pivots. And I hope I'm done. And
It
you kind of
never
know as
stops.
you come.
No, it never stops. Okay, so let's talk about you did the pivots. Who did you talk to? How did you put together your what I like to call the kitchen table or your kitchen cabinet?
Yeah, I love that. I would say what's interesting is I used to be in a lot of communities. I've taken on a lot of leadership roles in a lot of, thought leader communities and this kind of leadership community. And I found myself in the pandemic actually pulling back. I wanted to get very deliberate around who was in my kitchen cabinet. And I love that analogy. And I love Brene Brown talks about, you get the kind of like the one by one paper and you write the names. And so I used it as an opportunity to deepen the relationships of the people I really felt were really aligned with my vision, where I was going and how we supported each other. And so I have a very intimate circle of friends that I mastermind with that play sort of at the same level that I do. And so we're going through a lot of the same things. And so we leaned in together to hold each other accountable, to call each other's BS, to open up access to things that maybe we were blinded by or couldn't see the forest for the trees kind of space. And so I have a core group of people that are all over the place that I reach out to for different aspects of or a different lens. I need to look at either things for me personally or things in my business because and each one of them brings something different to the table. And each one of them is what I like to call the fire under my backside. They're not yes people at all. They do not sit at the table and coddle me. They do not sit there and tell me that they love or like everything I'm doing. They really call me out in what I speak, so that they make sure that I am in aligned and in integrity with my walk, so that I am walking that talk. And so it was the through the pandemic, I think it was an opportunity to actually deepen those relationships and really get laser focused and bring them down. And so I now play in a couple groups where I have a select group of people that really are my, they've got my six, they've got my back all day long, and I'm better for it. And I know they are as well, right? Because it has to be an energetic exchange and reciprocity. So we hold each other to a higher standard and a higher vibration.
So you talked about how you like assessments and how you can get the free charting. Could you go into how your process works? You know, when you're being paid by someone to do a chart.
Yeah. Oh, great question. So what I do is if somebody wants to do a reading with me, I actually will run a chart for them as well, even if they've gotten a free chart somewhere else. I have a really robust tool that I've invested in so that I can get a much deeper lens of all of the sort of nuances or key aspects in their chart. And so even for a foundational call, so even my kind of lower tiered, this is the first pass of how we would engage in a conversation around human design. I do a lot of research up front. I not only study their chart, but I go in and I really look at the energies of some of the nuances or some of the things and the way they move in their chart. So that when we have that foundational reading, which is a live call with me, they don't get one of my team, they get me. I will go through and then engage in a conversation that brings human design into practical application. And so it's really conversational where I will present some things or offer some insights and then see where and what resonates most for them. And that's an hour call that I typically do that first foundational reading. And while we are just focused on the fundamentals, it goes very deep because it's really to give them the groundwork of what they need to understand those fundamentals or the foundational pieces in their chart, so that from that they can start to align how they're making decisions and how they're doing things. That's where the shift really happens. Oftentimes from that, people really get kind of juiced up about that, want to go deeper. And then there's some different pathways that we explore. And so one of them might be looking at their 4 success paths and their individual leadership markers and what that means in terms of the leadership they're putting out into the world. It can be that. So it could be a container that looks like that, or it could be perhaps they want to run a chart for a spouse or a business partner, that then they want to look at the differences between their energy and that other person. And so not only will I run both charts, but then we look at where do their energies come in sort of connection with each other, and how do they work and how do they not work together. So there's that pathway. And or for those people that want to bring human design into their strategic visioning work, which is the core essence of what I do. It really is helping leaders get clear on what impact they want to put in the world, how they're leading their living legacy. That then what I do is I move them through my proprietary framework, which helps them get clear on that strategic vision. And we do that by overlaying their human design to extract out the individual nuances, the energetic coding, the language. There's real language in your chart that I've had people that we've worked with their branding or their messaging, and we've brought some of that language in that then help them magnetize bringing in the right clients for them, or magnetizing more sustainable growth, because not all growth is good. And we can see some of that in your success paths so there's the first pass is just really getting clear on the fundamentals. Then there's a couple different ways depending on how deep you want to go. And I have people that will work with me 3 months, 6 months, really diving deep, especially when it's connected back to some of that strategic visioning that they do to get super clear on how can I feel like I'm living and aligned to my purpose, and how can I truly intentionally lead my living legacy so it doesn't end up just leading me by circumstance.
Okay, Candy. Rabbit hole alert. Would you explain the significance of strategy and authority in human design?
Absolutely. And by the way, I love a good rabbit hole dive. So you're speaking my language. Yeah, strategy and authority. The most fundamental aspect of what you can understand in your human design chart, aside from your type. So it'll start when you look at your chart, you are one of 5 types. You are either a manifester who is here to inform and initiate. You are a generator who is here to do the meaningful work to move humanity into its next evolution. You are a manifesting generator, which means you are a generator, but you also have some of that manifestor energy. So you're here to respond just like the generator, but then really put some things into action and you move very fast. I'm a manifesting generator. You could be a projector or a reflector. For each of those 5 types, they each have their own strategy. So, for example, a manifestor is here to initiate. They're here to disrupt. They're here to get things going, and they are not here to ask for permission. They also are not here to do a lot of the heavy lifting or the work. They're here to get things started. They're not here to see them through to completion. A generator type is here to respond to life itself. So you're responding to what feels good and juicy and delicious and expansive and like wants you to go down those little rabbit holes because your curiosity is piqued. You want to become masterful in the art of learning, and you're here to do the heavy lifting of the work in the world. And so the generator types, generator and manifesting generator, are 70% of the population combined. So that generator is waiting to respond to when they get lit up in their sacral, in their body, for something that's like, ooh, I like that. I want to go explore that. So where a manifester has like a download or a spark of inspiration, they initiate something. In their initiation, oftentimes a generator type feels a response to do something. Not that they're telling them to, it's just a natural way the energy moves. A manifesting generator, like myself, is that generator that needs to respond, but as soon as they respond, then they can see it, they're envisioning it, and then they inform and initiate. And they are the fastest energy in the chart. And I know anybody that's been around me, especially when I'm lit up and I'm responding, it's like the Energizer Bunny times 10. And most people don't want to be around me when I'm like that amped up because I have a lot of energy and a lot of power in my chart. The projectors are this beautiful type where their strategy is to be recognized and wait for invitation. And this can be really challenging because they think they got to sit around and wait for someone to ask them to speak or ask them for their wisdom, when actually part of their life journey is to become the invitation, to become so magnetized that people want to get their guidance and wisdom, but they really are orchestrating our next level of whatever we're moving into, so that those that are the generator types doing the work know how to do the work more effectively and efficiently. They're like, if you look at a projector, they're what I would call the universe's ultimate project manager. So not surprising that a lot of projectors I work with are actually project managers. They like systems and they like processes more than they like actual widgets and things and work to do. And then there's the reflector, who their strategy is to, we don't live in an environment that works for reflectors very well. They're here to actually wait out the lunar cycle and wait 28 days before they make a decision, but they are reflecting back the health of a community or an environment at any given time. So they're showing us where we're out of alignment. The authority then comes in as the next layer. And depending, and there's various authorities, but the basic, the 3 core authorities that are the most prevalent are pure authority. For those that are sacral type, they know in the now it's either yes or no. Like it's and it's in the moment, and they just know, and it's a gut response. The emotional authority needs to wait over a period of time before making big decisions. Meaning, I used to think I was someone that's supposed to make decisions like that, and it usually bit me in the backside. Now that I understand that I'm an emotional authority, I give myself 1 to 3 days before making big decisions. And when I do, it grounds my energy or my yes in a way that I can actually commit and see it through, versus shiny squirrel syndrome. I fizzle out and now I'm bored. So those are a big example of, if you have one authority versus the other, you can see how making decisions is very distinctive and different. And say you have a splenic authority, that means you've got a little whisper in your intuition that goes, ooh, that feels really healthy. And you make decisions based on that intuition. A projector oftentimes has an authority where they have to speak their truth and actually hear their own words to know what feels right for them. And so when you understand your type, your strategy, and then there's the not self signature and all the things that live inside of that, and your authority, you can see how putting those pieces together becomes a unique roadmap or operating plan on how you make decisions best, how you work, rest, and play best, how you do life. Because we're not all here to function and operate in the same way. And so again, that's where I say that permission comes in, because there's something to be said when you go, oh, well, every time I keep trying to do it like Bill across the street, no wonder why I'm frustrated. I'm not wired that way. Man, when I make decisions like this, it feels easy. And that's part of what we're here to learn, is how to create more ease and peace and fulfillment and well-being, not this wind and grind, hustle, burn, churn mentality and energy we've been living in. Hopefully that gave you a little explanation.
Absolutely. So, Candy, how do you get busy executives and business owners to make the small changes that lead to massive impact?
Oh, first and foremost, I get them to stop calling it busy. We shift the energy of busy. I think busy actually is one of two ultimate 4-letter words that hold us back. And what I mean by that is most of the busy is this very frenetic energy that is burying under the shooting ourselves. And so it's helping those individuals realign to what really matters most to them. And this is where that strategic visioning comes in. It's getting them clear on their overarching, this is who I choose to be. This is the embodiment of leadership I want to bring into the world. And inside of that, these are my 3 big rocks, not 27, 3. These are the things that are most meaningful for this juncture of where I'm at in my life or in my business. And when you get people dialed into that, then it is tapping them into their type, strategy, authority, as well as other things that show up in their human design to say, are you in alignment with what works best for you and how you operate? Or are you saying yes to things that aren't for you, creating this overload of busy? Because there's a big difference between the word busy, like I said, buried under shutting yourself, and full. People tell me all the time, Candy, you're so busy. I'm like, there is no busy in my life. I am full. I also have lots of white space, but I'm full. I'm full because the things that I choose to say yes to fill my cup. They fill my soul. They allow me to be in a place where I am embracing leadership, love, life, like the way I get to be the full expression of who I am, and I stand in alignment of that. Full has a very different energy. And so some of that is really helping leaders sit with why they're so busy. What is creating the busy in your world, in your business? And usually it ends up being some pretty challenging conversations around sacred cows, around breaking down some fixed mindset, around embracing that they're not here to operate like everybody else that's running a company, that they see what they're doing. And it's not, the more they put themselves in the comparisonitis or the comparison game, the more that imposter syndrome kicks in, and they're doing they're doing the knee-jerk reaction of in how they're making decisions versus sitting with and asking. 50% of the population is an emotional authority, which means 50% of the population needs to wait to decide. So when you recognize, am I giving myself what I need to make conscientious and intentional choices that are in alignment and in integrity with who I say I choose to be as a leader? That's a whole different conversation. And am I willing to look at the sacred cows that maybe are keeping me stuck? And that could be myself, or it could be my team, or it could be my clients, whatever that story is that we're holding on to. And am I willing to do what's required to lead myself in a higher and more intentional capacity? Because if any of that's a no, then that busy is going to stay. But the biggest piece is to help people get out of their own way and to come back into a space that says, can you really get aligned into, do you know your core values? Do you know your standards of integrity? Do you know the things that are your anchor points, your due north? And likely we probably need to recalibrate that. The other thing is, for a lot of people, I help them reassess the definition of ROI. So many people, if they even really sit in the space of ROI, look at it as simply an equation of money out versus money in. And I would offer that one of the ways that you shift some of that busy is to contemplate your ROI as a function of time, money, energy, resources, people, lifestyle, culture, and impact. That is a very different conversation, and it pulls you out of this wind and grind, burn and churn, hustle for the muscle, and busy for the sake of being busy, which most people right now are busy for the sake of being busy.
Okay, I have to take a point of personal privilege. Do you have any tips for young or youth entrepreneurs who are considering using human design to gain a deeper understanding of themselves and their approach to how they make the biggest impact on society?
Ugh. I love that question because I think there's so much opportunity. I wish I would have had human design. I'm 50, almost 51. I wish I would have had a human design 30 years ago. I think about if I could have understood how I was wired at that juncture of my life, and I have no regrets, don't get me wrong, but to have that knowledge, to have that illumination and that blueprint that says, stop spending energy trying to be like so and so, and recognize that you were designed to be this unique. And I love the way one of my teachers says this. She says, look, you're a once in a lifetime cosmic event. You're an individual piece of the overall cosmic puzzle, which means if any one of us were not here on the planet at this time right now, the universe would have to entirely rearrange itself. So when you can give, and I know I've worked with some youth, I've had some, the younger generations that I've worked with, and I've had parents that are using this with their children. It's changing the conversation. It's allowing their kids to feel into that sense of permission. And we talk about how we want to empower people. Again, not something we can do, that's a choice, but we're giving them the tools to empower themselves. Imagine you have your operating plan in your hands. If you can access that operating plan sooner, you take away all of the stuff that many of us at 50 years old are trying to unpack and heal and decondition and unprogram and like all the stuff. You get in front of it before all that conditioning and all that programming takes over. And you allow people to drop into a sense of themselves. How does that not equate into being able to create greater impact in the world? If for most people, the biggest opportunity we have is to heal our own sense of self-worth and enoughness. And so we don't have to prove anything. We don't have to validate anything. We don't need to get external anything. We start to trust and know who we are, and we make no apologies for that. And I think about it if we could give that to our youth and we could give them the roadmap that says, I understand my wiring, because don't get me wrong, there's a responsibility in knowing your wiring. You don't get to just cop out and go, oh, that's my energy, that's just the way I am. It doesn't work like that. It's a spectrum. There's a low vibration side of our energy and there's a high vibration. You get to decide. Again, leadership is a choice. But when we are equipped with information, when we are equipped with the science of how we operate, there's quantum mechanics at play, epigenetics at play, quantum physics, that's the Western science piece of human design. When we understand energy, which is nothing more than physics, we are equipped then to take a higher level of responsibility and accountability and lead from a place of deep alignment and integrity instead of all this work that, like, I would love for everyone to have access to this early so that the work I get to do with people changes because they're so aligned that now we're just elevating them to like these levels of consciousness and impact and service. Oh, that would be delicious.
As we start to wrap up, Candy, is there anything you wish more people would ask you?
Whoa. Ask me. That's a really good question. What would I want people to ask me? Oh.
I tell you where that comes from. So during the pandemic, I ended up interviewing a lot of magicians.
Hmm.
And they had this thing where they said, well, you say you're a magician, and the first thing people ask you is, show me something.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, you got to have something in your back pocket that you can just pull it out and
Mhm.
do a trick right then and there. So that's kind of how magicians work. So I always ask that question, what is it that people can ask you right now that they'll, so that when you answer it, they'll know you're the real deal?
Hmm. Still a great question. That one's stumping me for a minute. I would say the best question I would is honestly, the best question someone could ask me isn't about me. It would be about them, and it would be, how do I explore a deeper level of alignment for myself? And because then I could ask some follow-up questions that would either take us down the path of just really getting clear in their vision, or taking them down a path to say, so let me ask you some questions and let me see how this resonates for you. There's a lot of times when I talk to people, I can see their human design before it's even like mapped out. But I would ask people, what I would love for people to say, Candy, how do I explore being in deeper alignment for myself? Because it opens up, that first of all says they're ready and receptive to receiving new information and exploring and jumping down some rabbit holes. Or they could ask me, what rabbit hole are you going to take me down now? And I would literally be a function of whatever energy I'm in, because I am constantly rabbit hole diving. So then if they could say, can I get on the train to go down the rabbit hole? I'm like, buckle up, because I have no idea where this baby's going. That would be a great question too.
Is there anything you feel comfortable telling us about? Anything new on the horizon that you would feel comfortable telling us about?
Oh, I feel comfortable telling you pretty much anything that's I could share with you. I would say the one thing that, when you're talking about it in the lens of human design, I think there's a couple things that to offer people is, there's a couple ways into this pathway. And the original human design kind of was a little bit denser, heavier, showing us, it was kind of here to kick us in the butt to show us where we're out of alignment. But there's new expansive language that allows us the tools to rewrite our narrative. And in quantum human design, there's this really expansive, juicy energy. And so I would say that if you're really going to go deep in the lens of human design, it would be to explore the fullness of it, not just this path that sometimes can feel like, here's what's missing, here's what's broken, here's where you're out of alignment. This just feels like another person's kicking me in the butt when I'm already down. It's then, what do you do with that? What do you bring into the table? And through gene keys and quantum human design, you start to create a more evolved language that gives you the tools to take ownership, to choose, and then rewrite your own narrative. Your narrative is not stagnant. It's not something you're stuck with, even if you got it from your parents and your lineage. You can rewrite your story at any time. And that is probably the most amazing thing I have found and watched people transform their own leadership, is in taking their power back and rewriting their story. It's
I guess
so powerful.
where I was going was, are there any projects you've got coming down the pipe?
Oh, well, then yes. So that's a great question. I have a couple things going on right now. I'm in the process of working on how to build out. In fact, I've already built out one piece of it. I'm building out what's called Decode Your Design by Design. So instead of just giving you the generic information around human design, I actually have distilled down training for all the fundamentals based on those 5 types. So there will be specific training for each type, so that it brings in the language of how you understand things and connects it to what that energy means for you specifically. I'm also running a very intimate container for the projectors to mastermind, because they are the ones that are going to be the next kind new wave of leadership that's coming in, and we need to get them ready. And then I'm building out bigger communities where people can be in this conversation to just tease some things out and play. So there's a lot that I'm building in the space of how to support other transformational leaders through the lens of human design, using that as one of the assets they have in that space. So there's training, there's books, there's several things in the works right now.
What's the best way to follow you on social media?
Yeah. I'm everywhere. well, I should say I'm on my places are Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram mostly. You can find me. I'm Candy Barone. Facebook, I think there's Candy Barone, trainer speaker. I think it's at Coach Candy Speaks. So I'm find me. I'm out there. Otherwise, you can see what I'm doing at candybarone.com, which is CandyBarone. Everything I've got going on is out on that site.
Candy, thank you for joining us on the Subscription Maker podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Zachary.
Before we wrap, remember, too many people work way too hard and earn too little from their online businesses. You don't have to be one of them. And that's a wrap.